Patrick Johnston covers the Canucks for the province and PostMedia, and he joins us now. Up for some gin, buddy?
The idea that you guys have literally been driven to drink is I can't even imagine a more perfect sponsor, let alone actual booze like provider.
Did you watch the game? Like, of course. You have to get through,
Get through Rick talking hockey, buddy.
17,
a little
20 shots a night. Like, yeah. All right, let's start with our poll question then while we're making fun of it. Mm-hmm. Does it matter how the Canucks win? Do you care
how the Canucks win?
Yeah.
Apparently we've got him stumped here. Look, I understand you covered the team without passion and prejudice. You're going to watch and cover all the games regardless. But for the market, for yourself or the market writ large,
do the fans care?
Does it matter
how they win?
I would say I think for the most part fans just want to see wins. I mean, Jeff has been on top of this question. I mean, he did ask Patrick Allvin this, I think, in January, almost 2 months ago. It don't aesthetics matter? Certainly back in the day, Brian Burke would argue that aesthetics mattered as much as the success. And we are in the entertainment business. So
Mike Gillis too.
And those are two guys on different ends of the hockey spectrum who shared that in common.
To steal a line from Thomas Drance, who once said of John Weisbrod, he said there is one thing that John Weisbrod achieved the impossible, which is to make Mike Gillis and Brian Burke agree on one thing. Now, I guess there's two things, which is that one, John Weisbrod not very good at his job. Two, entertaining hockey is the business. So we are in an interesting time. We're certainly in I suppose, if you want, a third poll. It's not the Burke Gillis world. There's a third poll here. It's the Rutherford world. There have been some impressive hockey people in this organization over the years. And right now we don't care about entertainment. We're trying to find wins. And I mean, certainly that third period was stressful last night. Score affects, obviously, some of it. When you are chasing the game, this is what happens. The team that is chasing the game tends to get more of the opportunities. That said, the game has evolved a long way from when we first learned that almost 15 years ago. And teams understand the mission. So the fact that the Canucks, if you go by natural stat trick, now obviously I'm not always a fan of their high danger chances point, because high danger chances can also be based on where the pass comes from. And natural stat trick's data basically looks at where the shot is taken.
Zonal, yeah.
They had 2 high danger chances at 5-on-5 last night, and they were in the first period.
Yeah.
That said, the power play actually looked good. So I think right now the answer is that wins matter the most. And that's all you want. And they build up from there. And certainly, I mean, the rhetoric is that it's supposed to get better and that it does lean. And I wrote about this yesterday. If you want to fundamentally understand the problems of this team this season, it comes down to 2 guys, and that is Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, and how incredibly poor they have been. Obviously, one of them is gone now. Elias Pettersson.
You say it should get better. How? How does it get better outside of Pettersson?
Maybe he needs to get a little more annoyed at his own play versus what people are asking him. It's pretty simple. It is simple. Move his feet. Get on the puck. Do all the things that you used to do. He was a brilliant, exciting player. Like, people forget this, but I get it. It's a year ago now. But up until a year ago, he was a thrilling, exciting player. It was not a fluke that he had 100 points. It was not a fluke that he won the hardest shot in this All-Star game. It was not a fluke that he was in the All-Star game altogether. Like, it's a guy that knows how to do it. He needs to go do it. Bro, do your deeks.
But let's boil this down, though. Like, I do think the Canucks still want to make the playoffs. Like, the management wants to make the playoffs, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes, okay. So if we're in agreement there, if you're the manager here, the president, you have to assume that Elias Pettersson is not changing for the rest of the season. That he is going to be. You have to, because you have to go worst case scenario. Yeah. So you have to assume he's not improving it markedly the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So how do they expect to, A, make the playoffs, B, win when they get there?
Well, one, they'll say Quinn Hughes, right? I mean, they will look at the way their defense played for the first half of the season. They've changed that mix. There's certainly we can tell the fact that Elias Pettersson, Junior Pettersson, as I believe Rick actually called him. I think that's where we're going. Played the other day, or is playing. Like, they keep putting in there, and he is performing. That is a positive. Marcus Pettersson has been a positive. They have reshaped their defense. They finally got Quinn Hughes in their new look defense core, right? Now, that is something they clearly are going to point to, right? The additions of Hedl and O'Connor. O'Connor, obviously not a top six winger, but there's spark and energy in the way he plays. The speed through the middle that Hedl has brought, like, they will point to those as game changers. Now, is Hedl legitimately a second line center?
Not yet.
Probably not. But they also have some cap space to work with. In theory, they have two weapons. They have cap space. They've got that first round pick. Now, what they do with them is kind of where everything is going to be. And this goes to your question, Blake. What else could this team be? Well, it's not complete, I think, from their viewpoint. So are they ready to contend this year? I don't think so. I mean, you go out there and look at what players you could possibly add, and it's a lot of older guys, right? And I don't think that's a direction they really want to go. But Elias Pettersson's here. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to trade him. I don't think they have much choice, because whatever you possibly trade for him is going to be so cents on the dollar. It's ridiculous. You made a bet on this guy. You need to see this guy turn around. And if he doesn't, well, you're hooped. But there was no reason to think he was going to turn into a dud after having been a stud for so long. So this is a team, this is a management group that, I think they will look at how they've shifted their roster. There's still work to be done. They will look at some elements of how they played last night, which was they actually did game the zone with speed and possession. Rick talked about the three lanes. They actually did have some dynamic attacks. And Elias Pettersson did make a dangle on a power play zone entry. Like, that was just like, okay, where's that been all year? Now, these moments need to happen, right? These are all one things. They need to keep happening. So that's what they're looking at, is that there are signs of life, but at the end of the day, you also still need to find more consistency.
2 dekes in the second period.
Ooh, what dangle?
Sure. Two dekes.
Sure.
Dangle.
Dekes per 60.
You stopped me. You stopped me dead in my tracks when you said they have a cap space and a first round pick.
Yep.
Like, surely you're not giving up a first for a rental.
Not a
right?
rental.
It's
I don't
got
think
to
so.
be
No, I
a
don't
player with
No,
term.
I don't think so. I'm just saying that I've known this going back to last summer, that there was there had been a willingness to go use that first round pick as if need be, right? Like, if they had been don't forget how they started. They were 6-2-3 to start the season. Like, they were looking strong again. And at that point, you could project forward saying, if this carries forward, like, they would be smart probably to look at that first round pick, because first of all, it's going to be late. So it's still value, right? It's not like you're trading a lottery pick, but you're trading something that has value. Yeah. And it's this, and as we've always talked about, they now sit in this, they have cap space. Like, that is a thing they can use.
I mean, if they miss the playoffs and they,
oh my God, yes.
Well, if they miss the playoffs, but like if you're trading that pick, you've still got 20 games to play. That pick could be closer to 10 than it could 30 when it's all said and done. So I realize everybody says it's not a great draft, but let's not diminish the value of that pick and where it could be. So I'm glad we're all aligned on it has to be for a player with term.
To get a player with term, PJ, would you expect that they would be willing to trade Jonathan Lekromacki? Or do you think they should, even if they don't?
Well, I mean, that then also becomes a Brock Boeser question, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, do you think Jonathan Lekromacki is ready to replace Brock Boeser? I don't think so. He's shown glimpses. He scored in the NHL. That's important. But we know physically he's got a ways to go. I don't see that as likely. They clearly like the direction. I mean, I would say the one thing we do know, they clearly like the direction their defense is going, right? They've got Victor Mancini. They like him. I mean, and let's be clear, Victor Mancini, realistically, I mean, they've got Hronek, they've got Myers, they've got Willander on the way. So what is Mancini? Realistically, right now, he's a depth right shot defenseman at best, right? Now, in the long run, maybe... But hold on, just think about it. Like,
well, no, I just think you're gifting Mancini a spot a little too prematurely here,
but I'm
Pete.
just saying,
Like,
no,
I think there's a halfway chance that Wielander is better than Mancini now.
No, to be clear, I'm downplaying, right? I'm saying,
Okay.
like, people talk about him, they've talked about him, but let's be real. There's already people ahead of him on the depth chart. Like, he's more than likely, this is an all prospects are bad situation. So nonetheless, they like where their thing is trending. They've got Elias Pettersson in the lineup, right? They've got Marcus Pettersson. They've got Hughes back. They have to make a decision on Soucy. They do like for all the sort of blandness of his game. Derek Forbort is effective when healthy, but he's a depth defenseman, right? Noah Juleson, obviously, we know the coaching staff likes for all his flaws, but that is a thing that's fine. But the forward group, they need things there. It is absolutely clear that. And as far as I know, Jonathan Lekkerimäki is still viewed as a future benefit in that area.
No question. And I think you're right about probably not next year, but in time, Lekkerimäki fulfilling the Brock Boeser role, I think is an appropriate gamble, if you will, to make.
But guys, like within the Quinn Hughes window, do you care that he helps you 3 years from now?
Well,
if he can be used as an asset.
Yeah, that's a fair question.
The Quinn Hughes window is more than just next year, though, Blake. So
no, I know. But still, 2 years from now, if you'd be ecstatic if he scored 20 goals 2 years from now.
But Quinn Hughes would be too.
No, but if you can turn that into somebody that scores 20 goals for you next year, is that not furthering your cause more?
Well, no, because you're probably paying that guy over and above to score those 20, whereas Lekkerimäki's playing on the cheap contract, and you'll be able to fortify your team by using that cap space elsewhere.
I'm more trying to think how they're thinking, guys, and I think that they need satisfaction now.
Yes, and that is, I mean, as someone very smart in the game once pointed out to me, that the GMs, they don't have the luxury, despite them having, supposedly thinking about the future, they don't. They have to win now because that's what keeps them in their job. Mm-hmm. And we have seen time and again this particular management group act in that way. How can we improve our team now? How can we make incremental gains now? Jim Benning stunk at that. Right? Like think back to the Adam Clendenning trade, right? I mean, that was the Forsling move, right? They said this guy's not ready yet, this guy is. And they made a bad bet. And this group still makes those bets. They've just been better at it. And that's the reality. So that's why, the first round pick being a possible trade chip has always been there. I'm less likely to think that they will move Lekkerimäki. I think that they really do value what he brings, and for all the reasons Matt said, because there's a cap advantage that he, I think they would like him in the lineup next year, right? Like there's a cap advantage having him in the lineup next year.
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boeser. You've done some poking around there.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's my job, right? You've got to figure out what's going on here. You talk to people, you see what's going on, and like, listen, nothing new. There's nothing really new out there that they both sides know what they want, know what the expectation is, and certainly the Canucks are leaning hard on Boeser's love of Vancouver. This is where this guy wants to be, right? Like his eyes light up. Like I mentioned that conversation, a month ago when we talked about walking his dogs in the woods out near where I grew up. Like he is a fan of this place, and there is without a doubt the Canucks are leaning on that in the hope that he will come to the number they want to give him. That said, they could very well still move him, right? Like if they are trying to build a team for next year with the playoffs in mind this year still, he's a player that can score. He doesn't move the meter on his own, but he's been a great complementary winger. He obviously has worries about his foot speed as he gets older. He is 28 now. There are a lot of reasons to be anxious about signing him to a long-term contract. But he's also a player who's gotten done in the playoffs, right? Like he was a good player for the Canucks last year. So there's a lot to like about him, and that's why we're going to hear lots of noise about him as a trade chip for the next week. And we'll see what happens. We'll see if he's a Vancouver Canuck as of next Friday.
Would that be Pacific Spirit Park? Is that where
Absolutely.
you're walking the dogs? Yeah.
Yes.
I walk around there often as well. It's a lovely walk.
It's marvelous. Yeah.
You will not get paid the same way as Brock Boeser. Just because you share a park with Brock Boeser, the contracts are going to be vastly different.
I'm under no delusions there.
For once.
For once. Listen to you. Who's getting lippy here?
Exactly.
17 minutes in. Cam Robinson thinks Brock's worth a first-round pick and a pretty good prospect, like a B+, B- level prospect.
Yeah.
Do you concur?
Who am I to argue with Cam? Who am I to argue?
Do you think they should? Do you think they should do that deal?
Well, I mean, what are you doing with the first-round pick? Like, I assume you're turning around and turning into something else, right? Like, you're doing the same thing you just did with Miller.
That's been their MO. So, and
I will
that gets you a little closer to a first or second line centerman.
Yep. 100%. Like that's how you do it, right? It's there's a veteran player, you turn him into exactly. That's how.
Okay, so play my reindeer game for a second. I've got it written down here. Hold on a sec. Boeser for a first and a top prospect. Pius Suter for a second or a third. Carson Soucy for a second and a third. Let's say you get 1 second, 1/3 out of those. Okay. Forbert for a fifth.
Okay.
You've got 4 draft picks and a prospect to go into the summer. Ammo on top of what you already have, your first round picks, your top prospects, to go and get that first or second line center. That's if they
with the cap space, Matthew, with the cap space.
That's if they behave as pure sellers at the deadline.
Yeah.
Does that intrigue you at all?
That's a lot of selling. That's probably more selling than I would expect.
All UFAs.
I get it.
All UFAs. That's just the UFAs. We're not touching anybody who's under contract or club control for next year.
Absolutely. I get what you're doing. You
didn't mention Soucy there? You did mention Soucy.
Yeah, Soucy.
He's not UFA.
What's that?
He's not UFA.
He's not UFA. He's got 1 more year.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my bad.
And that's why I was like, it's maybe a little more selling. And I mean, that's, as I said the last time on, the idea of trading Soucy to me doesn't fit with the overall MO that this front office and certainly Jim Rutherford has shown in his career, which is that they want defensemen, not to get rid of defensemen. However, and they've already made a shift. They moved away from Desharnais. It didn't work, right? Forbort, I mean, maybe they talk him up because he is a guy they'd like to move, but like for style,
he's grown on me during the year. Like that hit yesterday. Wow. And that's on Kopitar too. Like,
his penalty killing stats are crazy.
Yeah. He's grown on me.
He is stylistically an incredibly dull player, right? He's not a great passer, but the numbers don't lie. When he is on the ice, the Canucks are in the offensive end of the ice, and they do not give up shots. Now, that's true of them as a system, but Forbort fits this system very well. The breakout is a concern, obviously, but you can see why the Canucks were interested in him. It is in the end, it's a story of why did they go in the way they went collectively. They went with Desharnais and other defensemen who couldn't move the puck. Like that was a poor choice. But now they've got, as I said, the core more in line with what they want to be, and certainly have shown glimpses of what this team could be better with the puck, moving it, breaking it out. And of course, now we will see what it's like with Quinn Hughes back in there, and maybe it changes the thing. But at the end of the day, they've got to put it all. They need to find that consistency. That's been the issue all season, and partly it's been about how the roster's been constructed, and partly that's been about the insane dynamics behind the scenes. Fiasco, somebody said to me, looking back at it. It was a fiasco. They don't have that.
If Elias Pettersson is hitting on all cylinders, a guy like Braden Shen would probably be okay. But there's going to be a cost of acquisition there for the Canucks. And even in the summer, again, same thing holds. If Elias Pettersson's going, signing a guy like Sam Bennett makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But are either of those two targets lucrative enough, given what we're seeing out of Pettersson, that you even bother showing interest?
Like, when I sort of said you look at the sort of lists, a lot of old guys, Braden Shen is top of that list. Like, love the player, love the career. He's going to be 34 this summer. You already had concerns about JT Miller, and you've moved off him. So now we're going to bring in a guy that's 4 years older. Like that is one of the things when I sit back and I try to think about what they might do. I mean, I think it comes back to this being, it's good. If they do something, it's likely to be a total surprise and something we haven't talked about just because of looking what's already on the table just doesn't strike me as something they want to do. But that said, if we're talking about trying to win now, Braden Shen would make your team look very good in the playoffs this year. There's no doubt about that. But next year after, you start going, oh boy, like what do you actually want to put on this team?
Forgive me on that Susie thing. He's a player they want to move off, not a UFA.
Yeah, and you've got to ask. They also have to ask his permission. That doesn't get talked about enough. Like he's got trade protection too, right? So
he's pretty happy here, despite everything. He likes it here.
He's got a full no trade clause. Like,
last question from me. It's our first time talking to you since the Kevin Lankinen extension.
Yes.
Does that make Thatcher expendable to you, or are you a ride them both next year and see where the chips fall type of guy?
I mean, going into this season, once they'd signed Lankinen, the impression we all had was that they were going to try for a three-headed monster. Obviously, the Shilov's story went badly. Maybe it's better coming here. He had a good start on Sunday, but one start does not make a season, and on the whole, his season has not been good. So, yeah, I mean, I found myself thinking clearly they wanted some kind of stability. Locking in Lankinen, who has been a very good player for them, clearly not a guy who can be the guy, but he can be one of the guys. They are setting up for some sort of tandem going forward. Does that feature Thatcher Demko? Well, right now, I guess it does. But I can't believe they're comfortable with that. Like, this is a guy that has had a substantial injury 3 years in a row now, right? I go back. I do think I wrote this in 2019. I said, is it worth actually going the other way? Everybody was looking at Markstrom and his situation. But I said 6 years ago, I said, is this a guy actually, should they go the other way? It was a lesson from the Corey Schneider years, right? You know what you got in your number one guy. True number one guys are hard to find. They saw what they had in Markstrom. Should they have turned around and said, okay, this kid's shown enough, maybe we need to find something. And at that point, they had like Mike DiPietro obviously hasn't panned out as an NHL goalie. There are reasons for that probably don't have to do a lot with him. But nonetheless, at that point, we thought they had a pipeline. There's no pipeline right now. Like, Seelovs is kind of it. Nikita Topilo has not had a good year. Ty Young, I mean, I suppose he's had a good first season as a pro, but he's mostly been the ECHL, right? Like, there's no obvious next guy. And so they need, they will like to see how Shilov's pans out here, and maybe he changes the discourse, but I think we know what he is. And he's sort of a quad A goalie at best right now. So is Thatcher Demko? I think he is by default, but I can't imagine the Canucks feel comfortable about that going forward. So we'll have to see what they do.
Not a prediction. Who would you start versus the Ducks?
Who would I start on Thursday night?
Yes.
Archer Shilovs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Incidentally, everybody, after his victory last night, Michael DiPietro leads the American Hockey League in save percentage.
Does he?
920.
He's had a great listen.
Good for him.
He's all grown up now, too. He's no longer Mikey. He's Michael DiPietro.
Well, we forced that on him, unfortunately. I generally like to go with names. I was like, there's no way.
He also leads the AHL in wins. He's got 20 wins.
How old is he now?
He's had a good run. And, like, that's an organization that knows goalies, right? Like, they know their goalies. So he landed in a good spot. It wasn't going to work out here, but, like, it's good for him. It's good to see. He obviously had a brief call-up. Didn't play, but had a brief call-up earlier this season. He's playing really well in Providence. Rebuilt his game. They were playing really well in Providence. So
25 years of age.
Yeah, like...
Yeah. Sometimes goalies bloom late, get to the NHL later.
Well, it's a statement about
wish him the best.
Yeah.
He was a fun kid.
Yeah.
Loved his enthusiasm here.
Yeah, you really did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're a fun kid too.
Be well. See you on the other side.
Roaming about Pacific Spirit.
Yeah, see you out there, Matt. Yeah. Watch out for those dogs.
And the coyotes.
But enjoy your drink while you can have a beverage while you're out there.
In the flask. S&P. Dry gin.